We are so excited. Welcome back to the show. We're going to dig into the evening edit debate tonight. Look who's here. The Hill political reporter Julia Manchester and National Review editor Rich Lowry. Thank you both so much for joining us. Let's start with you, Julia. Who should President Trump pick as his running mate?
Well, the three names that it seems to have been narrowed down to are Florida Senator Marco Rubio, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. But, talking to a number of Republicans, Marco Rubio is the name that comes up quite a bit. He's someone who can obviously appeal to Latino and Hispanic voters in major states like Arizona and Nevada. And he's also someone who might have some more sway with Republicans or maybe some more moderate voters who aren't exactly, sold on Trump, but still don't like Joe Biden, particularly like Nikki Haley voters, for example. So he's a name that's being brought up, but who knows? This is Trump. He could throw in a wild card.
Yeah, true. Who do you think, Rich?
Well, those are, of course, three names we're hearing a lot about. Doug Burgum is a totally safe choice, right? It'd be a focus of attention for about 6 hours, and then he kind of disappear, which maybe is what you want to do in this environment when so much of the focus has been on Biden and not in a good way. I kind of like a dark horse, though, the Virginia governor, Glenn Youngkin, who I do think helps with some suburban voters who might be not so enamored with Donald Trump, has executive experience, a serious businessman, an adult. He's not going to wilt under the pressure. So I wouldn't say the odds are in his favor, but there's some slender chance, and I think he'd be a very good pick.
Yeah, all of these gentlemen have stellar credentials. You're making great points. The president's pick matters. That person is going to be the GOP standard bearer in 2028. They need to bring in the swing vote, plus give a contrast to Kamala Harris, who D.C. critics have said is not up for the task of being vice president. By the way, let's watch President Trump slam Biden picking Kamala Harris. Watch this.
He picked Kamala Harris as his vice president. If Joe had picked someone even halfway competent, they would have bounced him from office years ago, but they can't because she's got to be their second choice. It was an insurance policy, maybe the best insurance policy I've ever seen. And I don't think Kamala Harris's California socialism is going to go down well with the people of Doral, the people of Miami, or the people of Florida. Because in Florida, we don't like socialism. We want our freedom.
I don't care if it's him or somebody else. It's also policy. It's more about policy than anything else. And these radical Democrats are all radical. Everyone that they're talking about is a radical left lunatic. And whether it's Biden or whether it's somebody else, I think it's the same.
So he's not worried about, he's going to beat Biden, Julia, but what do you make of what he said about Kamala Harris? And the voters are sick and tired of what's going on with the cover-up of Biden's decline, and they're sick and tired of Biden's big government approach. What do you think?
So President Trump's comments about Kamala Harris really echo what Republicans and, including President Trump, have been saying for quite some time now. A vote for Joe Biden is essentially a vote for Kamala Harris. And that's a maybe not so subtle reference to the fact that the president is in his early 80s. He would be, 85 or 86 when he were to end his term. So there's questions as to whether he would finish a term for whatever reason. So I think you're going to continue to see Republicans use her as a scapegoat.
It's interesting. And, Trump is saying that, he could announce his Veep choice maybe at a rally in Western Pennsylvania this coming weekend, Rich. That's near where J.D. Vance is from. J.D. Vance is a fighter. He's a pit bull. What do you think of J.D. Vance? Final word.
I think if I had to put odds on it, I'd give him the best odds. Now, who knows? But the states where prior to this point Biden had been holding up the best, the swing states, were those blue wall states, those Rust Belt states. And in theory, J.D. Vance has Rust State appeal. Certainly this is a key aspect of his economics and politics, is trying to win over working class voters. So I say in theory, whether he could actually help much in those states or not, I'm not so sure. But obviously, if Biden somehow wins, which there's some chance of it seems unlikely, that he would actually serve as president of the United States until January 2029 is one of the most preposterous things the American public have ever been asked to believe by a major political party. It's just not going to happen. So you're in effect electing Kamala Harris to be president at some point without her being on the top of the ticket.
Whoa, who knew we would be here? Julia Manchester, Rich Lowry, thank you very much. That was really interesting.